The iPhone came out 2007, Steve Jobs on stage. Imagine if iPhone 16 came out the year after.
Used to your phone only being a phone and a camera, and suddenly you can talk to it and it talks back.
Are likely to be most affected early on in this cycle of disruption.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 21st, 2021. You are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today, as you can see on our screen there, we're talking about Sam Altman, but specifically about some recent comments he's had. And he's made others like this, talking about the rapid pace of advancement in AI. And what he says is keeping him sort of up at night, for paraphrasing, is this idea that what responsibilities do people like himself, excuse me, being, at the head of OpenAI, but also others, what ethical responsibilities do they have for this pace of advancement with AI? We are going to talk today about how quickly AI is advancing. I don't think that's a shock to anybody, but sometimes if you just start putting out some of the context out there, you go, oh, wow, that is faster than, maybe we realize it has been. And then really the conversation opens up on this Monday about, what are the ethical responsibilities to society for all of us, not just the Sam Altmans of the world who, we sort of think about having his finger on the button of, do I put GPT-5 into play or don't I? We want to think it's that easy. Is it just the switch? Is it just, well, here you go, society, here's GPT-5, and by the way, it's crazy different than GPT-4. Oh, and deal with it. Or is there, he's talked about in the past, is there a longer, slower play here that's actually better for society? The answer is he doesn't know. Maybe we'll come up with a good answer here. To get to that end, we have Andy, Karl, Beth, and I'm Brian. And I think this is just a fun Monday conversation, right, Beth, to kind of dig into about what are the societal implications? Where do you sort of come at this from?
Well, I think one of the things that's happening is, and Karl mentioned this last week, in terms of change, the changes are starting to be so fast that it's beyond our ability to experience. And this is a framework that Paul Reitzer uses often, is like you can understand the difference between walking and riding a bike. You can understand the difference between riding a bike and getting in a car. But we don't, because we literally can feel the experience. But when you get in the plane, you don't experience the difference in the same visceral kind of way, because our ability to perceive that is not, it's just sort of beyond our context to be able to see that. So that's sort of where I'm at. Thanks. Andy, where are you? Karl, I see your mouth moving.
I think before we go any further, could we play the clip just so people are kind of aware of what that actually means?
All right. Yeah, do you have that queued up or do you want me to pull it out?
Yeah.
No, he's got it right here. Here we go. Go for it.
The thing that concerns me the most is just I believe that society can adapt to almost any amount of change given a reasonable amount of time. But the tools that we and others are putting out into the world, if things keep going like we think they're going to, will require society to adapt at a rate that is more challenging. And it's the ethical implications of the rate of change that we're about to launch through that trouble me the most. And it's very unclear what to do about that. Well, I think there are things that could be done for it, but that society will have the will to get done and also would be good. That's very unclear. So it's this, if we kind of go through a rewrite of so much of our society this quickly, what can we do? What shouldn't we do to help people adapt and thrive through that?
I think why I wanted to play that was, and I'm seeing it when we are going into businesses where there's so many things that came out, right? So the real-time API is out. So all major labs will probably enable people to build on that. You have different multimodal aspects. So Runway, you have 11 labs, you have HeyGen. There's so many different elements that are being pushed out. So it's so fast that there's no way any normal person will be able to keep up, not in the AI space, just everybody doing their own thing, focus on their job, focus on their family, focus on, whatever's going on in their lives. But in the background, this thing is moving at a pace we've never seen before. So what I got out of that was, how do we enable people to adapt to something at that's moving at an exponential pace that, unless you're in it, you're like, oh, I think the fear is what just happened, right? We all talk about agents. We talked about OpenAI Swarm. I think Microsoft released their blog post today about Copilot agents. So, and just the panels that I've talked to, businesses that I've talked to, they're still in the very, hey, we just got Copilot. We're now going to put out this thing, but we don't know how to, and even all the AI labs, when they put these things out, they're not quite sure what the use case is. So the people who are developing all the use cases are all these developers. And it seems like they're either on Discord or X posting this cool stuff until they're waiting for the next thing. And then that's it. So it's too fast. And now we're like, okay, how do we apply it to regular people?
Now, let me jump in. I think that there is a pace of development that's difficult to comprehend, even if you're studying it as we do as a team every single day of the weekdays. And on the weekend too, jumping in to try to understand more about what's happening in the multiple aspects of it. And then there's the pace at which society and its institutions are changing in response to that. And that's very slow. Humans are very ingrained. There's huge inertia. So, but I was encouraged by one statistic I heard somewhere over the weekend, which is that 70% of individuals in corporations are now bringing AI to work with them in their own personal capacity. That means they're using ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or whatever as they do their own job, despite the fact that the institution, the company itself, hasn't taken a sort of an assertive way to strategically embrace AI or otherwise. So there is adoption at the individual level in the professional cadre. But the general public out there is not in any meaningful number, like still single digits percentage adoption in the general public. And so the great masses are not prepared for the disruption that's going to happen as a result of the technologies that you're mentioning, Karl, particularly agentic AI, possessed of multimodal and ultimately embodied resources. So it can see, it can show, it can walk, it can talk. It does all the things that humans can do. And all of that leads to a grave concern in various areas around the disemployment of humans that will happen as a result of the employment of AI and robotics and automation. So on that front, you might have heard that there's right now 45,000 dock workers on the East Coast disrupting the supply chains with a strike, the first time since 1977. It's the first time the dock workers have gone on strike. What is the number one issue that they're striking about? Automation. They are basically striking to ensure that automation doesn't hit those ports. Why? Because automation, which only happens to exist in the United States, of the 7,000 around the world, there's not very many that are fully automated at this point. One of them that's been partially automated is Long Beach port on the West Coast. But none of the ports on the East Coast have yet used that kind of automation that's displaced dock workers. So there's a union institutional response to this pace of development and the fear that it'll happen so quickly that there isn't enough time for those dock workers to find meaningful alternative employment and or training that equips them to be viable as workers and as wage earners in the coming world. Now, I want to point out one other thing, which is you remember that the Nobel Prize in physics, the Nobel Prize in chemistry, those went to AI researchers. Now, the Nobel Prize in economics went to Simon Johnson of MIT. He's the new Nobel laureate in economics, who is focused on the crucial impact of technology on society. It's not a mistake that all these things are happening around this. The Nobel system is saying, here's where the advances in science and in society and economy are converging around a major issue for the future. So this all just reinforces that. By the way, Simon Johnson's team of people at MIT, and they called the Future of Work, that's their unit within the MIT infrastructure. He and the others who received the Nobel Prize in economics alongside him are focused on this issue. What happens in society when technology is introduced that then results downstream many decades later in a prosperity gap and a division between those people who control the means of production. I'm going to sound like a commie here. The means of production and those who don't. And what I fear is that there will be a dramatic sort of expansion of concentration, right? Just contraction of concentration into the hands of the very few who control these tools of AI economically. And the masses are not going to participate in that. And that's the structures that we have to address ethically in order to ensure that humans have a meaningful place in society going forward. Sorry to get on my soapbox there.
No. I'm listening to you. I think when I hear you and you talk about downstream effects, what immediately comes to mind is, yes, and even though in the past, if you think of a song, my mom was a huge Billy Joel fan, so I often think when I think about this is the song Downeaster Alexa, which is talking about how he goes out to the sea and like his father did before, right? Yeah, it's a beautiful song. It is, there's no more fish, right? You got to go farther offshore and da-da-da-da. Well, that's not automation, but the same idea that, my father was a coal miner before me and I go to the coal mines, whatever the case may be. And now I'm at the ports, and now there's this automation. Even in our past, what I get scared about, not scared about, what I guess I go with Sam Altman on in this, Andy, is there's been at least time to say, all right, daughter, all right, son, don't go into the same field as me. Even if you've been brought up and you want to do what I did as your parent, mother or father, don't go down that path, because we already know that my profession is going away. What my fear is that you can probably still catch that if you're going into the minds of whatever. And I don't want to get into, in this particular statement, about ability, resources, where you live, because obviously that factors in dramatically as well. I'm just simply saying, up until this point, there's been time to adapt. But now I see a future where I have a 13-year-old who, I've said this before, is reasonably 8 years away, maybe a little bit more, from reaching the workforce. That would be after 4 years of high school and let's say 2 to 3 years of college. That's a predicted path. And in the past, you'd say, well, that's just 8 years. That's not even a decade later. And today I find myself sitting as a parent going, what would I even say to her today other than prepare to be a generalist and hold as long as you can before focusing on a particular area that maybe lights her up for work? Because the fact of the matter is, it may or may not exist in 2, 4, 6, 8 years because of agentic workflows and things like that beyond automation. Like, I see what Sam is saying. How does a society react that fast? In the past, we've had literal generations. We've had decades from electricity to industrial revolution. to even the internet took decades. Smartphones took years. AI is taking months. That's where I sit on this. It makes me nervous.
So I like the analogy. The analogy I keep using when I talk to businesses is if the iPhone came out 2007, Steve Jobs on stage. Imagine if iPhone 16 came out the year after. That's how I always equate this stuff because that's how fast. And we're talking about, hey, all the features that, the evolution of the iPhone from 1 to 16, all those things are now available. No one's going to be able to use it because I don't know what half these things are. How come it's bigger? How come what does this do? Swipe, all those things. I'm not sure. I kind of know use the iPhone, which iPhone 1 would be ChatGPT, but then iPhone 16 is you have what? You have agents, you have voice, you have video, you have all this stuff. So unless you follow all the tech like we do, but that's not even a brag. That's just because we're interested in the thing. That's more of that's what we're interested. But there's so many different things. How do you keep up? But I also thought, wait a minute, maybe it's not a bad thing because the ability for society and businesses and people to adapt, if maybe it's better that they adapt pretty slow, but it doesn't kind of coincide to where the AI labs are going. Because if we're to believe Sam Altman's blog post, Dario Abaday's blog post, what AGI, they want to have those tech in our hands and reach some sort of super intelligence, AGI type intelligence in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That doesn't jive with how long it takes people to adapt to this stuff.
I don't want to go on a tangent, but I want to just bring what you just said real quick, Karl, and jump into somebody else. But you just made me think of this. The phone, right? So we're talking about the iPhone in 2007 or whatever. Okay, let's just say in 2008, in just 12 months, you no longer need throwaway digital cameras that you go to weddings with. You're not doing, Eastman Kodak was already circling, but if you worked for Eastman Kodak, you had time to pivot in 2007. You had time. Okay, in 2008, when I moved to Florida, I still went to Blockbuster Video down the street.
Yep.
Okay, but in 2009, Netflix is what it is today. In 12 months.
Yep.
And at the same time, in 2009, that Netflix is that now you can talk to your you can scream across the room at your phone to set a timer or an alarm, and it does it. Right?
I mean, those ripple effects.
Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about because we're so used to it now. The fact that you can talk to your phone, I realize if you're really in it, it seems stupid that it can only set an alarm and a timer and sort of small random stuff. And that should hopefully be coming soon that changes. But if you are just used to your phone only being a phone and a camera, and suddenly you can talk to it and it talks back, right? Those are the kinds of changes we're talking about. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you put it in perspective and you go backwards to technologies that we lived through, and then to Karl's point, maybe a good way to conceptualize this is to say yeah, okay, this happened, and then in this year you had this. Now compress that to 12 months. What happens to all the ripple effect industries, the people who go, wait, hold on a second. Oh, wait, no, I'm already out of a job. By the time you can turn around and say, wait, hold on, is that going to hit me? And then that's it. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but surely just AI in the 2 years, we're almost in November, in the 2 years since 3.5 became publicly available. Okay, so we're almost at that 2-year mark. So 24 months, what that's done just in marketing or copywriting, which I've been part of and stuff like that, just in those two little areas, and how quickly it impacted people who had very good jobs, who are probably paid good money because they had a set of skills that made them very valuable to a company, whether they could do video editing or whether they could do image editing or whether they could do copywriting, which I was doing, stuff like that. And then to quickly see this new technology swoop in that may not be as good as you, just like digital photography and my friend Angela, who's a professional photographer, but good enough for you to lose your job because the company says, well, this is enough for us. We don't need an expert. We just need somebody who can do this really, really fast. It's interesting. And I wonder what those real numbers are. I don't know if we can even get those of how many people have been displaced already from AI. And my thing is, yeah, sure, that's 24 months, but the pace is only picking up. So what was 24 months will be 12, will be 6. And what do you do when your job completely disappears in 6 months' time? What could you do? What could anybody do in that case? Other than just be out of a job and just trying to figure out how to get your head on a swivel to pivot fast enough to go to whatever the next thing is.
I do want to go back, throw a question back to the team here, because Netflix, iPhone, they were dependent on a couple different other technologies, right? So 5G, 4G, I think we're all going towards 6G, whatever it is. Certain things those things needed to happen. Streaming, right? Netflix needed certain technologies are dependent on these things to actually be implemented, so it becomes easier for people to just quickly use. So I'm thinking, what are the dependencies that AI would require, or does it have any dependencies that enables people to use it? Because right now, with your phone, you can access most of these things, probably pay the $20 a month gives you access. Not even paying gives you all access, open source, but most people just can't access that. So is there anything that AI is dependent on or still requires to get that mass adoption?
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, look, I don't required. I mean, you're going to have devices that have the ability, just like we're seeing with whether it's iOS 18 or the phones that are coming out with the abilities with the more advanced chips. I mean, to do more advanced agentic type things on your computer, I believe that you will be quickly on the outside looking in if you're not capable of updating like your laptop per se, like in 2 years. Like what, like right now, my laptop that I'm sitting in right now is like a borderline gaming laptop, because I used to do a lot more on Adobe. I've talked about that on the show, but it's now, I bought it when I started the shop with Scale. So it's like 3.5 years old and it's fine today, but I could quickly see that, this brand new AI power hungry agentic thing comes out that revolutionizes how we work. And my laptop at 3.5 years old will be like a dinosaur and just won't be able to do it. I know, Andy, you sort of talked about Macs before and like that level of a Mac, and you go, but I only have a 4-year-old Mac. How is it no longer capable of doing the things I wanted to? Because in the past, a 4, 5, 6-year-old computer was like, 4 or 5 years old. Maybe it was starting to hit the limits of what it could do. But now I think you're going to start seeing things where they make updates and like a 2-year-old computer is going to be not good enough anymore. So I don't know, maybe that answers where I'm thinking, Karl, where you're saying.
I want to jump over to which industries, are likely to be most affected early on in this cycle of disruption as a result of AI. And often it's discussed that transportation and logistics will be changed. AI is going to, support the supply chains in ways that human schedulers and intermediaries couldn't ever really accomplish. And there you get, that's the Dockworker strike, right? That's transportation and logistics. Manufacturing, clearly with manufacturing robots. Customer service, definitely. We've talked repeatedly about the customer service call centers in Asia that are, just not going to be required anymore. What happens to all those people who are making really good money and supporting families? Financial services, healthcare is going to change. It's a little slower because of all the regulatory requirements to ensure healthful outcomes and so on. And I think also software engineering. There's a whole generation of people who have studied software development and engineering, and honestly, I don't think there's going to be a shrinking of the number of engineers that are required is going to be concentrated with people who are architects and collaborators with AI tools, but you're not going to need an engineering team of 30 anymore in an enterprise. You're going to need an engineering team of 5 because of AI. What happens to all those entry-level positions that are being replaced by that? And what's the impact downstream of the disappearance of entry-level training positions? How do you get people at the higher levels that are still needed? Or is there a generation gap that happens where, hey, the next generation coming along isn't going to have the opportunities to learn well enough to even stand side by side with AI in a co-intelligence way? Again, not to freak everybody out, but there's a lot of disruption here involved. And, what came out of the economic studies that the Nobel laureates studied, looking back in history, is that wherever a country was able to apply a new technology in a way that it was involving a wider swath of the population, those countries tended on the sort of trajectory of progress. They tended to arrive at a level of economy that also included prosperity that was shared. But the ones that just did extractive economies like colonization, where they didn't really do anything to support the native populations, instead just put a small team of people there to take the goods out and send it over to the others, those countries had persistent long-term disruption to their societal institutions that sort of made that happen in a long-term way. And those countries did not end up prosperous for their whole populations. So what that concludes for me is we have to find a way to involve the full population in AI and use of AI. And that's a daunting task at the moment, given the low level of participation of the general population, even though they're participating sort of inadvertently by using Siri and Alexa. Oh, that gets me to this other point, which is over the last 20 years, there's been major technological advances. You talked about them around the phone, but just even the internet, that wasn't that long ago. 95-ish, probably, was when it first came out, to the general public and was available for general use and not in DARPA. So during that period, did the middle class really benefit? Did the middle class in the United States of America benefit? Or was there really an erosion of the role of the middle class and the success economically of the middle class, so that, income and wealth disparity and inequality was really happening during that technological advancement? It could be even worse with AI. We really have to figure out a way to address this.
So one of the things that's interesting about that is that what you're talking about, so 3 of us are in the U.S., Karl is Canadian. This is one of the central conversations that's happening in our election, right? We have a candidate who's focused on talking about the middle class, and we have a candidate who's focused on talking about the wealthy. Let's just leave that comment there. But what I find really kind of disingenuous about this, except that they're saying they're obviously being genuine, is the disconnect between, hey, we're moving really quickly in this technology and we're spending trillions of dollars to move in that direction. We would like for you as a society to try to solve the problem about how you're going to handle what we're going to release, without actually seeming to take any responsibility for that, right? Like, it's, hey, we found a way to put an umbrella over entire cities. It's going to be amazing. It's totally great. We have the city umbrella and we're just going to do it. Yeah, it's probably going to mean that all foliage dies, right? Like, I mean, it's like you could take a small part of your city umbrella fund and educate people and give some stuff for free and have some larger conversations around that. And that's the part that feels disingenuous to me. It isn't like they don't have resources to really affect this, but they're as on the whole, all like Google, Anthropic, X, OpenAI, everyone is devoting all the resources so that pool of people who are in this race, that pool of companies are in this race, are trying to cross the line first. But they all have resources that could help shift what this experience is for everyone else.
I think what you're bringing up, Beth, too, is Elon Musk, proposed this, and a whole bunch of people signed it. Was about a year ago, when more than that, when they signed a thing and said everybody should pause and slow down. And I didn't believe for a second that Elon that was just a way of getting a competitive advantage, right? I don't believe that he had any altruistic reasons for that, really. Not to pick on him, by the way. I'm not zeroing on him. I'm just saying in general. But there's also the scare of, okay, but if we don't keep moving at this crazy pace, somebody else will. You can just input whatever you want. You can input another country. You can input another whatever you want and say that, but they'll keep going. And if we pause, even for a second, even for a nanosecond, we could potentially be behind. And you don't want to be in a place where the right people are behind on that. Now, that's a narrative, right? From different perspectives, the right people changes. If you're in the States, obviously, hey, we're, the U.S., let the U.S. be in charge of this because democracy for all. But if you're looking at it from some other countries, you're going, I don't know if that plays as well, right? That narrative of the U.S. will protect the world. They have the best interests of everybody at heart. Okay. So there is that scare of, even if as we listen to what Sam is saying, and let's just say Sam is having conversations. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but let's say they are conversations inside OpenAI going, when is the right time to deploy X, Y, Z, whatever it is? And they do have the best interests at heart. Number one, it doesn't help them when it comes to investment and getting towards AGI, because if they slow down, they get less money. If they get less money, they can't invest it back into more compute, more power, more resources, more nuclear, or more whatever, in order to reach their end game of obtaining AGI. So even if we all collectively agreed, I don't think there's anything we can do to stop the crazy train. Like, I think we're all on it, and it's going to move without brakes in a direction. And now it's like, okay, we're on the train. How do we best prepare for the speed of which we're on this train? Not, hey, can we slow this train down? I don't see it. I don't see how that's going to happen. By the way, we have like a ton of great comments. I just want to call out everybody that's in our YouTube comments right now, and also let everybody else know. I mean, I realize not everybody is available live with us at 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. But if you are, I highly recommend you coming over to YouTube and participating in the comment section. Not only have I seen some new faces in there, Patrice, Gwen, you've been with us before, but Patrice, thank you for joining us. And I want to scroll. See, I have to scroll back so far just to get to Patrice's. That's how many comments are happening in there so fast. Okay, so I want to bring this up really quick because Cisco and Jude and Gwen and Patrice and Jen are all putting on so many different, and I'm sure I missed some people. But let me bring this one up. Justin, thank you. Patrice said, in my current position with the company I work for, instead of getting rid of us, they are paying for our education to become data analysts. Our job is completely changing. They are no longer hiring. And then there's been many, obviously, more conversations after that, a post or whatever. But I think that's such a powerful comment. Thank you, Patrice, for being willing to share that as part of this conversation. Because obviously that's what we would love to hear, is that companies are able to get re-education in there and keep their workforce and just give them the ability to learn new skills instead of getting rid of them. But also we know that that's not the case everywhere. For every, like, maybe success story like we might hear from a Patrice, there's also stories of people from laborers at the docks who are just literally being replaced with automation, and there isn't any reskill to be done. They're not telling the workers on the docks, hey, don't worry, we're going to teach you how to interact with the robots, that are automating your old job. You're just out of a job. And now there's a new tech company that's overseeing all of this. And we might keep one or two of you around because who's going to know best how to manage this dock? But we'll let you know when we need your expertise, your 40 years, 30 years of expertise on this dock that you've worked. We'll keep a few of you so you can tell us how to let the technology run the automation. So we'll keep you around so you can tell us how to get rid of more of your coworkers that you were with for the last 20 years. And what is that supposed to do?
Well, I think that comes to a head because remember, I was listening to the Hard Fork podcast and they were talking about in 1971, I believe, you want to fact check that. I think the Dockworkers had a strike too, and this time it was against containerization, right? So containerization, instead of offloading all the different things on a boat, it's all put in containers, and then the containers were offloaded, right? And so there were people who had jobs who had to offload while you put in containers. Same thing here. It's like, well, we're gotta automate this. But if you look at it from the business angle, well, it's cheaper to do this. And it's interesting because the head of that union also wrote an op-ed about it was like close to a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, talking about how he had a disdain for E-ZPass, right? You go through the toll, you have an E-ZPass, there isn't the person there anymore. And then he was saying, it's like, hey, everyone forgot about the person who was taking the toll. Well, you're now running up against convenience for everybody and resources versus keeping people's jobs. So most everybody from an E-ZPass perspective, like I saw the comment, the first comment was, so you're telling me you want me to wait an extra 10 minutes in line for this person to keep a job? That makes no sense. And that's like something about like the speed of technology. So that's what we're coming up to a head on.
And Karl, this is nothing new, right? We don't need street lighters to light the lamps. So like somebody 100 years ago or more might have said, so you're going to tell me I can slip my fingers and get the lights on in this street immediately, faster than I can blink. But you want me to keep the person that's going to come down the street because John was super cool and really nice to my kids and pet my dog, and he would come around and light the lamps, and in the morning he would snuff them all back out. We love John.
Yes.
But now there's electricity, and now they just come on when I need them to. And now it's safer for our community because we have more light in the evenings and there's less crime and blah, 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 blah. But we really love John. John was a great part of the community. I mean, we've seen this over and over and over again through history. I think it's just what we're talking about today but this disruption is going to happen so much faster. The Johns and the Janes that get disrupted from their positions are going to happen in what feels like a blink of an eye. Whereas in the past with that electricity, you might have known a big town over like Boston has electricity, but you might be 4 miles outside of Boston and be living for maybe a full more decade with street lighters, lamplighters. If you might know it exists, you can see it, but you're like, it'll take forever for that to get here. Or just look at internet. We still have places in the mountains that don't now with Starlink might have broadband, high-speed internet, but there's a reason people still get DVDs by mail, that's still a thing that exists. And it's because people do not have the ability to stream at their house in the United States. So
unless Elon says that you really should go do, I think that's one of his issues, right? It's like, well, we have Starlink, why doesn't the government blah, blah, and then like that, I think that was part of his initial beef. He wasn't invited to something, so he's mad. Like so it's very, very like this. It's this rate, and I think it goes all the way back to what Sam Altman said at the video. It's like the rate of this change is so much faster than people can comprehend. And yes, there's the adoption. People are slow, but some of these other things, like I don't know if the automation of the dock workers is an encapsulation of that. Because maybe that's not even AI, that's just straight up automation. That's like just regular things that it's just part of the natural progress. But to me, for example, voice talent, I know specifically companies that are like, yeah, we're not hiring voice talent. Because if we can just go in and just get this person to talk, and we're not talking about full-blown books, which 11 Labs is going after Audible, but even something simple as companies wanting to do award ceremonies, which they had a voice talent in different languages to I guess, for the nominees, that's all replaced by AI. That used to be somebody's role every year. They'd get paid 5, 10, 15,000 to do all these awards. Now they pay whatever tool $20 a month, not even $20 a month, $40, 2 months. That's it. And that, so, right?
And yeah. So I think we're talking about some examples that maybe the average folks don't engage with very often, but I think most of us have experienced it in a grocery store, right? So there was a time when the only way to check out in a grocery store was in a face-to-face interaction with a cashier. And that shift has happened. And that may also be a rural thing, that's not happening certainly as quickly in rural communities. I live in a city, so I don't actually know. But that kind of thing, right? That cashier was a job. And that's not happening so much anymore. And to Andy's point, the knowledge, when you, like what Patrice was talking about, so what the company is doing is retaining their institutional knowledge, right? So they're going to retrain people so they don't lose that. And also maybe they're just very nice people, which is awesome as well. Be nice. If you own a company, be nice in this transition. But the other piece of that is how much you are feeding the automation or the AI or that kind of stuff so that it can do things with that institutional knowledge as well, right?
I want to just throw in a really optimistic note, which is that AI and automation will dramatically increase the productivity of our economy. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's a huge flow of money that's going to come from that. It's going to be highly concentrated. But just remember, this trickles down. It just trickles down. All those wealthy people are going to spend things on things like yachts and jets, and you'll be able to, I don't know, you get a job cleaning the jets or something like that. So just remember, trickle-down economics is going to save us from this problem.
You remind me of who used to say that all the time? Was it Bush? The senior Bush. He used to always say trickle-down economics on it. That was like part of that big, I remember that big campaign at that time. Not to get into politics.
Right.
Okay, we're running up on time here. Go ahead, Beth.
We should say that Andy's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
If that's
Andy
not
wasn't
coming
being sarcastic, I'm not going to assume.
That was my silly sense of humor.
Yeah.
Which is like that's not going to work. There are potential policy solutions that provide for a more equal distribution of wealth and support a consumer economy, because you have to have money in order to be the supporting consumers, right? So there will be policy changes, but it's not clear at the moment that there's a will to do that, at least on one side of the political spectrum.
Okay. So I think we're pretty much on time for where we want to stop this today, because we obviously keep talking about this and we will come back to it. But it's, it's an interesting conversation. I greatly appreciate all the comments that are in the YouTube chat, because I wish we had time to bring up every single one of them. But what's really cool about the chat is that there's a full conversation going on there as well. I'm like, you could always see our eyes darting off to the side of the screen because we're reading the chat too. But that's because there's so many great comments in there. So I want to say thank you again to everybody in the chat, and please come join the conversation if you'd like live. And remind me real quick, Beth, can they go back and see the chat if you weren't here on the live? Are they able to see the full feed of the chat for a previous live on YouTube?
They should be able to. It doesn't. It takes a while to filter out. So as soon as this filming, as soon as this live stream is over, you'll be able to play the live stream back again if you go to lives. If you go to lives right after, the comments won't be there, but they do populate afterward.
They do. Okay.
But we'll also edit this and give a cleaner version. It's not dirty, but I don't know what to say. More streamlined version of the video. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, I just want to make sure on that. Also, I want to bring this up really quick. If you want to check out our other episodes, if you want to learn more about the show, you can go to that QR code you see on the screen or thedailyAIshow.com. You could also sign up for the newsletter there. Well, nice little graphic or a little spinning graphic around it. So you can go sign up for the newsletter there. The 20th edition went out yesterday morning. So if you want to be part of the newsletter, it's free, goes out once a week. We don't do anything else with the list. It just grows, and we try to put out the best newsletter we can once a week to complement this live show, but also start to hit some other topics that we don't always typically have time to hit, either because it's not a big enough topic for a full show, because we talked about it in the Slack code. There's a lot of reasons that it would land in the newsletter. So the newsletter is in addition, I think, is the better way to say it, than just a carbon copy of what you're going to see on the show. So if you're interested, I'm losing my voice, but you can definitely go check that out. All right, we'll wrap it up for today, but this has been a great conversation. There's about 20 more things I think I want to be like, but what about this and what about that? So we'll bring it back for another topic. Keep coming back the rest of this week, though, and I'm going to tell you what shows we have going on. Just give me a second so I can see them. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about agnostic agents versus platform-specific agents. So what's the real path forward on that? Wednesday, we have our news, as we typically do. Thursday, we're going to be talking about Perplexity again, but that's because Perplexity just came out with some new advancements, spaces, and some other things. So we're going to be talking about how they're really sort of reinventing specifically enterprise search and what it might mean for companies now and how they might use Perplexity. That's going to be really interesting. And then Friday, we have Machines of Loving Grace, AI, Humanity in the Future, based off of Dario Amodei.
Dario Amodei, who's the CEO of Anthropic.
CEO of Anthropic. Okay, fantastic. All right, so that's what we have coming up the rest of this week, guys. Come back and hang out with us. Until next time, until tomorrow, have a great day. Thank you again to everybody in the comments. See everybody. Bye.